So I get to make the pitch for the annual appeal this year, huh? A little change of pace. I'm actually kind of grateful that Father Tom asked me to do it. You know, when you're a parish priest, you often get up and you often have to make the pitch on behalf of the Archdiocese. And then you go into specialized ministry like I've been in for some time, and you're the one who benefits from the pitch, but you never get to make the pitch yourself. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that a little bit. Obviously, you know what this is about. It's about seeking financial support for all the ministries in the Archdiocese. You know, and there's a whole bunch of different ministries that I'll try to highlight a couple of things and we'll see a video for in a minute. But the one thing you always got to remember, it's never just about the bucks. Obviously, I'm making a pitch for financial support. That's part of it. But because we're disciples of Jesus Christ, we never make any of these kinds of decisions in some kind of separate category as though it might be separated from the faith. Oh, well, he wants me to write a check, therefore it has nothing to do with Jesus. That's not how we think. That's not how we think. If your faith is informing all aspects of your life, how I raise my kids, how I go to my job, whether I'm nice to people when I drive up and down the parkway, right? It's also about this too. So I want to make sure you take that kind of prayerful disposition. You know, earlier, a couple of weeks ago, when I was with the Cardinal and we were going to all the organizational meetings for this thing, the Cardinal sort of distilled it in a really nice way, and I kind of liked it, so I'm stealing this from him. He said, ultimately, this whole thing is about what I do with what I have because I believe in Jesus Christ. What I do with what I have because I believe in Jesus Christ. And if you think about it, that's what's happening in the gospel. It's happening right there in the gospel with the call of Simon, who's ultimately Peter, Andrew, James, and John. What I do with what I have because I believe in Jesus Christ. What do they have in their hands? Their nets. They're fishermen. They encounter Christ, they come to a belief in Him, and they have to make a decision. What I do with what I have. I've got my nets in my hands. I am a fisherman. This is how I put a roof over my head and food on the table. This is my source of material income, right? And in their case, what do? They make the decision because they believe in Jesus Christ to let go. And ultimately, that's their vocation. Now, I think if we use our imagination, there might be others that also might have had nets, but had to do something else. You know, maybe they were called to foster the community of believers there in Capernaum, while the rest of them, while Peter and Andrew and James and John followed Jesus around, right? There's different answers, and the answers could be different for all of us, but it's all about what I do with what I have because I believe in Jesus Christ. So with that in mind, we're going to show you the Archdiocese video, right? I'm not in it, so I don't have to sign autographs at the end, okay? But just give you a chance to watch this, okay?
My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, a blessed New Year to you and to your family. I think that most of us are willing to put 2020 behind us. In the past months, we've become wary of words like unprecedented, challenging, and uncertain, too often used to describe the global pandemic that enveloped our communities and our nation. It is difficult to forget the haunting image of Pope Francis blessing the world from a dark and empty St. Peter's Square. And yet, in that very darkness, there was Christ. What a powerful image. Christ crucified, Christ with arms outstretched in his ultimate, timeless act of love. He embraces all of humanity, embraces each of us, burdened with sickness, fear, yes, and even with death. Throughout the pandemic, Christ was present with us, in our hearts and in our local church of Newark. Our families became domestic churches. Brave priests, religious, laymen and women found innovative ways to bring Christ's light to others. We are moving confidently forward in faith because, my friends, the mission continues. The annual appeal plays a crucial role in funding programs and ministries at the heart of our mission: to proclaim the gospel, to pass on the faith to future generations, especially to celebrate the sacraments, and to care for the poor and those on the margins. For the duration of the 2021 annual appeal, we will share stories that illustrate how your contribution directly benefits the lives of those we serve. You will hear from our auxiliary bishops, each of whom has responsibility for the life and mission of the Church in one of the 4 counties that make up the Archdiocese. That's Bergen, Hudson, Essex, and Union counties. You will hear from religious men and women and lay leaders whose contributions are essential to the life of the Church. You will learn about our continuing commitment to the pastoral, spiritual, human, and intellectual formation of the next generation of priests and deacons who will serve our local church in the years to come. We will share updates about our vibrant ministries and apostolates that evangelize within the vast cultural mosaic of the Archdiocese. St. Paul often praises the first Christian communities for their partnership in the work of the gospel. At this moment, I want to do the same. In times of joy and in times of uncertainty, you have supported your parish and this local church, and I recognize gratefully our partnership. Once again, I humbly ask your assistance. If you've not made a gift to this year's annual appeal, I invite you to prayerfully consider one today. Every dollar will be used solely to fund the mission and ministerial programs of our Archdiocese. To make a gift online, please visit arcan.org/sharing. Thank you again for the many ways you support your parish and this local church. May God bless each of you and your families as we look forward in hope.
Not a bad video, right? I thought this year they did a pretty good job. And I have to tell you, a little side note, I work with the Cardinal all the time now. I'm constantly going in his office and meeting with him and stuff. He's a nice guy. Like, he's kind of chilled out. Like person of character, you kind of have a conversation with him. I always feel heard by him when I talk to him and stuff. It's kind of a nice side note. So just to give you, he talked about what does it mean to give money to the appeal so that it forwards the mission of the diocese, right? We're called to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and to care for those less fortunate than ourselves. Just give you two highlights to give you a sense. And if you want to talk to me in the lobby about all the other stuff, I can do that, okay? One, every now and then as I'm leaving, I get a compliment over my homilies, right? You come up and say, hey, Father John, nice homily, which I like. And I always tell you what, it's rooted in prayer. I always tell you, because they are, they're rooted in prayer. Where do you think I learned how to preach a homily? Seminary, right? Also learned how to pray, deepen my relationship with Jesus Christ in the seminary. And guess who made it possible for me to study in the seminary? Everybody who donated to the annual appeal. When I first got to St. Catherine's in Cedar Grove, I began by thanking them. Thanking them for paying for my education and my formation as a priest. Because they're the ones who made it possible. And until this past summer, I was rector of the college seminary. The money that went to the appeal went to the formation of young men so that they could discern a call to the priesthood. We have a brand newly minted deacon, right? A permanent deacon here, Matt. He's not on today, but we've seen him preach, right? Where did his formation program come from? How did it get funded? The annual appeal. Another extreme, very different, okay? Mercy House. There's a place called Mercy House. It's run by our Respect Life office. Cheryl Riley founded. As part of her efforts to foster Respect Life, she realized there were a lot of women keeping their children who needed help in the inner city of Newark. So she took over a convent, and she uses that as a place to provide supplies for those who are in need. The director of development told us at a meeting that he went and visited Cheryl and he wanted to leave in tears. Why? Because a parent came in with a 4-year-old just looking for shoes for her kid. And they could do that and find the shoes for the kid. Why? Because that Mercy House exists because of the annual appeal. I could go on and on. Education of young people, catechetical programs, the worship office that Father and Tom and I have worked on to support the parishes as they proclaim the gospel message. These are the kinds of things that the money goes to. Now, a couple of numbers, okay? Our parish goal this year is $84,000. We haven't made the goal in some years, but the good news is that we're growing. You know, last year, 2020, our donations were $13,000 higher than the previous year. That's a year going into COVID, right? Because we started COVID right around, this is when things were starting to pick up. So I think that's a beautiful thing, that's great. And what we'd like to do is make it up even more. Let's see how close to that goal we can get. And I'd also like to increase the number of people participating in the appeal, because the numbers of people involved says, these are the people who are committed to sharing their discipleship with the bigger church. We know we're not just Notre Dame. As Catholics, we belong to a bigger picture. That beautiful basilica in Newark, that's all of our spiritual home. That's all of our place. And this is part of the way that we reflect that reality. So by doing this, we're saying in prayer, more people committed to proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, a couple things you need to take to prayer when you're thinking about this. There's this thing going on you might have heard of. It's called a pandemic. COVID, right? Crazy thing, right? Which means two things. One, the need is bigger than ever. Unemployment in our 4 counties, way up, way up. People who are in need of assistance, definitely higher. So our programs that help the unemployed, care for the poor, and so on are really, really key. You know what else we have to acknowledge? It may have affected you. It may have affected you. So you have to do what you can. If you've been affected, like you're unemployed due to the pandemic, I think the good Lord would understand, right? You know, that's just part of the nature. If you were like me, I still have a job. My benefits are intact and everything, right? So if you're like me, where you got that blessing, well then it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe this is a way for me to say thank you and help those people who are not as fortunate as I am, you know? The other thing I wanted to make sure I acknowledged was that I know, if you didn't get it already, that there was a Christmas collection mailing that went out from the parish, because guess what? The pandemic's affecting us here in Notre Dame as well. Balance it. Balance it. Remember, the annual appeal can be a pledge. You don't have to do that right away. You can do that a little bit over time, see what works best for you, take them into prayer, and again, do what you can. Now, you may have received the donation envelope in the mail from the Archdiocese already. Just in case, I'll be out in the lobby, so you can take an envelope home and pray over it. Think, what am I supposed to do because I believe in Jesus Christ? For those who are live streaming, you're watching the web, right? You can go on arcan.org, go and do ways to give. The big thing is you write in that envelope, and if you're doing it live stream through the web, you make sure it's acknowledged. Notre Dame Parish, right? Because we want to get credit for Notre Dame towards our goal for any donation you make. And just so you know, I went to them in the office and said, hey, Notre Dame has been very good to me over these years. Even though I'm in specialized ministry, this is my home. And so my donation is getting credited to Notre Dame. I don't know anything about it, okay? So that's just something that I kind of make sure I pushed, okay? One final note. You know that when I preach homilies, when I tell you if I'm challenging you, it's because I'm challenging me too. This is my envelope, all right? It's already filled out on the inside flat. See, I'm using it as a visual aid, but at the end, it'll all be sealed up and I'll be making my own pledge as well. I wouldn't ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. That's part of the gospel message. And so I'll be standing in the lobby if you need anything, and you can pick up an envelope for me. And just know, thank you, and God bless you.